Well, welcome everybody. My name is Jamie Sunsbach, and I am one of the co-organizers for 1 Million Cups Rochester. And on behalf of all of my fellow organizers, thank you so much for joining us today, once again in this virtual world. And unfortunately, you know, this world is very much different than just 1 month ago when we last gathered. So a couple of things that I want to chat about just briefly with you is I want to reiterate, you know, and this comes from not only the top at 1 Million Cups in Kansas City, but definitely from our ecosystem that 1 Million Cups Rochester is an inclusive, safe space for all entrepreneurs. And by all, I really mean all. Anyone is welcome. Just because we're located for physically in One Discovery Square doesn't mean we're focused on only medicine or high-tech companies. And I think we've done a great job between our organizers and our previous presenters to show that time and time again, companies and organizations across a broad variety of different economic disciplines, as well as our presenters have been very diverse, and we want to continue that as well. So at the same time, we acknowledge that we have to do better and include those in Rochesters who really haven't had a chance to tell their story. So a lot of times I'm asking the speaker is how can the community help you? I really wanted to take today to do a special request of how the community can help the entire entrepreneurial ecosystem. First and foremost, you know, we need to reach out to our networks and invite those that might not feel included or welcome to be part of all of our ecosystem events, including 1 Million Cups. We need to provide a welcoming and safe environment where we're Minnesotans. We know how to do this really well. And most importantly, show that we're willing to understand and help in any way we can. And we need to start a better dialogue with our entrepreneurs and all of our entrepreneurs across the community and begin a conversation about how we can truly be an inclusive entrepreneurial ecosystem. And what I really want to hit home today is please don't wait for us to create an event or a dialogue. You can do this today by reaching out on the phone, email, reach out to people and ask to start a dialogue. And I think that's something that it could be a huge takeaway from today is start reaching out, start talking, and let's start really, truly making this an inclusive entrepreneurial ecosystem. So with that being said, we have some housekeeping. So out of courtesy to our speaker today, if you're not a speaker, please mute yourself. There'll be an opportunity after the presentation to do a Q&A to ask questions of our presenter. Please use the chat button located at the bottom to submit questions, and I'll call on you to unmute and ask your question. One of the other things is, and then this is where my mouse then suddenly disappears and I can't find it. Amanda, do you have the ability to launch the poll as a co-host? I'm putting you on the spot, I'm sorry.
Let me look.
Because my mouse has disappeared. These are these little Zoom things. So if you could launch that poll. We have a poll. We have 2 questions that we use to report back to 1 Million Cups Central in Kansas City. And so we could get some numbers to them about who is attending our 1 Million Cups. So thank you for doing that in advance. So what is 1 Million Cups? 1 Million Cups is a free program designed to educate, engage, and inspire entrepreneurs around the country, and most importantly, in our community. Each month, we feature a great entrepreneur from around our region to share their stories with us. 1 Million Cups is also about a very powerful question that we ask our entrepreneurs. How can we, as the entrepreneurial ecosystem of Rochester, help you? For all of our attendees today, it's really your job to listen to what our presenter is asking and find ways to help. I think we're good with the poll. If you could make that disappear, or maybe I have to make that disappear myself. So technical problems with Zoom, yippee. So first of all, I want to thank our founding organization, which is the Ewing Marion Kauffman Foundation in Kansas City. They're the creators of 1 Million Cups, and they allow 1 Million Cups to happen in over 160 communities across the United States. And basically, they're all happening right now, which is amazing. Really highlighting and lifting up entrepreneurs in our community. We also want to thank our sustaining sponsors. These are organizations that have stepped up and said that they believe in entrepreneurship here in Rochester. The Collider Foundation, the Music Camp Group, Ready, um, Destination Medical Center. Wow, I really can't see around anything. Dunkin' Donuts, Trail Creek Coffee Roasters, Cafe Steam, CETA, and the Bee Shed. So thank you all to all of our sustaining sponsors. If you're interested in presenting at a Million Cups Rochester, obviously you can't click this link on your screen, but if you head over to 1 Million Cups, this URL here, you can apply to present. We would love to have you present. And if you're interested in playing a role, being an organizer, one of the things that we really want to do is continuously refresh our organizers here at a Million Cups. So we want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to lead. So if you're interested in doing that, please reach out at rochester@1millioncups.com, and we can talk about how you can help. And social media. So we have various forms of social media. If you're unable to be here for the entirety of today's discussion, you can always catch us on demand at 1 Million Cups Rochester's YouTube page. The easiest way is just to type in 1 Million Cups Rochester into YouTube, and you'll be able to find it. All right, with that, I will stop sharing my screen. Hey, my mouse came back. Amazing. And I will open it up for announcements. Does anybody have any announcements about stuff that's going on that you would like to talk about? Please unmute yourself and jump in. Nothing. Wow. Not surprising, right? There's a lot of stuff going on the last few weeks, and so we tend to see things happening in waves, and certainly with the Assistive Tech Challenge and some other events, we see that wave. So that's also a good time to probably take stock of things that we can be pushing forward in the future. So we won't belabor that anymore. And take a moment to acknowledge our speaker today. So I'd like to introduce Lynn from Do Learning and Development, and she's going to give us an overview of her company and what she does. And again, since we can't all stand up and do a virtual round of applause, because that's really odd on Zoom if we all stand up, just please put your hands together and clap for Lynn. Take it away, Lynn.
Hello, everybody. Hi, sorry, I'm gonna try to share my screen here real quickly. And of course, anytime you do this, it works great in the initial part of it, and then something always happens when you go to do it. So, yeah, I'm gonna try this one more time. Jamie, I had it all up and queued and something happened here. So I don't know if any of you can see it on your side.
Nope.
All right, I'm gonna try one more time.
I've always wanted to say this. If instead of talk amongst yourselves, chat amongst yourselves. Oh, right, there we go.
Right. There we go.
It works.
Okay. All right, so, wow, thank you so much. Talk about making it scary right away at first. When you think you've practiced everything, you need to practice it again. So let me just share a little bit about my personal background. So thank you, Jamie, and all of you at 1 Million Cups for allowing me to be here today. But I just want to give you just a quick view of my personal background, and I'll be brief. I did grow up here in Rochester, and I graduated from Mayo High School. My family moved to Texas, where I eventually graduated from the University of Texas at Austin. Go Longhorns. I worked in several different industries before really finding my passion for people development. And I discovered this while I was managing a network of 7-day bank branches in San Antonio. Yes, 7 days we were inside grocery stores. So it was very challenging in a lot of different ways. But from there, while I was doing this, I really found my passion for developing people. I progressed into the Senior Vice President of Corporate Training, where I received my corporate coaching certification, as well as becoming an insights discovery practitioner. So 10 years ago, I moved back home to Rochester with my 3 daughters. I worked for Think Bank as the Learning and Development Director, and over a year ago, I took that leap of faith and started Do Learning and Development. So that's a very brief overview of how I got here. Now let me share why I do what I do, and how I could really use your help. So I want to share some facts that support the reason why companies like mine are really important today. So 1 in 3 American workers say their managers don't know how to lead a team. 1 in 3. 1 in 5 new hires are unlikely to recommend an employer. And more than half of all employers believe that their employees lack the communication skills needed to be successful. So if that isn't enough, here's some quick information that might provide additional insight into a couple of these facts. So just in the new hire process alone, 88% of employers and organizations don't onboard well. There's rarely a structured process past the first day, and most onboarding programs don't last longer than a week. Very little time is spent on culture or even expectations. So how can we really expect people to be successful if we don't provide them with the necessary knowledge, tools, and understanding required of the organization and their position? The good news is that we know how to fix this number. It's great employee onboarding having a great employee onboarding program can improve retention by up to 82%. So I'd like you to consider your onboarding process. Did it then or does it now measure up? It's really never too late to implement a good onboarding program, or actually even a reboarding program. So adding to these facts, soft skills training can boost productivity and retention by 12% and delivers a 250% return on investment. That's a pretty significant ROI when you look at what it takes to get employees successful. So I work with companies and individuals to help customize what they need. So what exactly do I do to help clients? What do I do? Well, first of all, I help my clients identify what's really most needed. One size doesn't fit all, and most clients really are unique. If you struggle with retaining talent, I look first to find the root of the problem to see why people leave. Maybe they don't leave, but you need to understand how to get the best out of your people. What motivates them? Maybe you're doing what motivates you and not what motivates them. They're not always the same. I also work to build stronger teams through more productive relationships. Again, understanding and communicating effectively. I mentioned onboarding a few moments ago. Well, how do you best onboard those who you hire? And how are you managing through the changes that inevitably happen in an organization? So I really believe that most people want to do well and they want to succeed. They just don't have all the necessary tools and skills to do so. And that's where I help. So what of this list is resonating for each of you right now? If any of these is resonating with you in either what you have experienced as an employee or as an employer, let me ask you to consider this. Is this you? Do you find yourself saying any of these variations of these bullets? Do you hear people say, I can't seem to keep my people? My managers really need help. They're good people, they were great producers, but they really need help. They're not having a good experience managing, nor are their people. Or maybe you just want to be a better manager yourself. How can I be more effective as a manager? I hire people and they just leave. That happens often, right? Or maybe I struggle in my communication. I can talk to some people, but not others. Or my staff don't seem engaged anymore. And right now, communication is even more important than ever. With all the changes that's going on in our world, we have to be communicating and we have to be working to engage our staff. So this last one's kind of one of my favorites because it's pretty common. I know they don't want to work for me forever. Well, consider like a restaurant owner hires part-time workers and knowing they will leave. They may, probably will at some point, but why not make it harder for them to leave? Why not ensure that when they do leave, They believe that it was a great experience, it was a great organization, and they're recommending your company to anyone who might be looking for a great part-time job. So remember that stat I shared earlier? 1 in 5 new hires wouldn't recommend an employer. I really don't want any of you or any of my clients to be that company that isn't being recommended. So what is my ideal client? And people often ask me this. And here's some of the folks that I really love to work with. Nonprofits. I love working with nonprofits, and they often tell me they can't keep people because they can't pay enough. I'm sure all of you have heard that, and even in industries outside of nonprofit. You know, in some cases that may be true, but I find most often people that work in nonprofits don't do it for the money, you know, kind of like teachers, they're there for the mission. So when you're working with them, they often leave because of the manager and or the culture. Banks and credit unions, love working with them. That's my background. I get them. Let me give you an example of this next on the owner-operator. So there's a client that I've worked with, and he's a producer with his own agency. He had to hire a part-time admin because he was doing so well, but he never managed people before. So we know that finding good part-time work can be challenging. And often they don't stay. And oftentimes it's because you have a producer that moves into a management position that knows nothing about managing. It's not that person's fault. They've just never been taught the skills. So I've been working with this client to really help him retain this part-timer because she does a good job. So he's learning how to build, engage, empower, and really provide the motivation that works for her so that she's doing a really great job. This is allowing him to spend time doing the things that he does best, which is producing, and she gets to do the things that she does best. So really it's been a win-win for both of them. And lastly, people in commission sales. They don't always think about how their communication style and sales style can really impact how they may unknowingly be turning off a new prospect or a customer. And I can give them things to think about that really make that connection more productive earlier on in the relationship so that it's much more positive and productive on both sides. So now that I've shared a little about why I do what I do, what it is that I do, now I need your help in getting in front of these businesses, individuals and nonprofits that I know need my help. That's been a struggle along the way for me, is really helping them understand the impact that soft skills training can have on their organization and really the ROI that it produces. So I'm also very open to your ideas on how I present my company. So are there areas I could be more clear or more descriptive? And I really will open things up to get some feedback from you all.
All right, we have a couple questions. Chris, did you think of a question as you indicated in the chat you would? Or not?
My space bar was not unmuting me for some reason.
Ah,
I
Zoom
did
is
think of a
having a wealth
question.
of trouble.
I know, I'm struggling this morning too, so we won't put it all on Zoom. Well, first of all, thank you so much for presenting. The question that I had was in relation to kind of your ask to the community here as far as being able to reach out to businesses and individuals to let them know what you're doing and what services you provide. What have you done in the past, and what ways have you tried to reach out to these businesses or individuals, and what do you feel seems to be working with that, or what are areas that you have challenges with?
I think so far the most productive areas for me have been in my networking groups. So I belong to, BNI is one of the networking groups. I will also say the Chamber AM Espressos have been very successful. And then I'm also part of the Refine community. So those are several of the different areas that have been. So personal referrals have been the most successful for me. I also try to be active on social media with LinkedIn. I have a website developed. I have a Facebook page, Instagram, Twitter, just a little. So those are the areas that I've been trying to get with. But I think the referrals and the networking piece has been the most successful.
Great. The next question is from Christine. If you want to unmute yourself
Hi,
and ask the question.
Christine.
Hey, Lynn, how are you?
I'm good.
So the question I was going to ask is, how long would your typical engagement be with a company? How long would you like it to be? So do you prefer to go in and help them get to a certain place, or do you prefer to have a long-term co-working relationship kind of thing?
You know, I always say that I like to try to create independence for my clients. And so, especially when you're working with small and medium-sized businesses, I will say that I have both. I have some that are short-term. For example, maybe I just need to go in and help them with their onboarding program. A lot of times somebody just needs to kind of have a direction for that. And that's something that I think is better managed by the company. So I like to help them identify the areas that they need to improve upon, help them develop a template that they can continue to work with and modify. So that's probably a more short-term solution. But then I also have clients that I work with where I have an ongoing relationship with them, where I'm working with their teams monthly or quarterly. And then in this case, the individual that I was working with, the owner operator, in his case, I'm working with him and we're doing one-on-one coaching every 4 to 5 weeks. And we will stop that after a certain time period.
And so as a follow-up to that, so is it just you? So are you constrained by who you can personally connect with then?
Yes, it is just me. I am a sole owner and operator.
All right. Natalie, you're up.
Hi, Lynn. Great presentation, and
Thank
it
you,
was really
Natalie.
fun about your business. So my question is, how do you evaluate a company's current situation? Because it seems as though you offer a lot of different services. So how do you go about that evaluation process to then determine what services you're going to provide?
Well, I like to go in and talk to, sometimes it's just in the case of the owner operator, talking with the owner operator. In other cases where I'm working with an organization and an ongoing, I usually talk to the leadership team as well. So the executive director or president who I'm working with, and then I'll go in and talk to the leadership as well to try to determine, first I ask what are some things that you're working on? What are the areas that you have most struggles with and what would you like help with? And then I try to get to know the leadership team and understand what they see as some of the challenges. Where I can, I like to talk to the individuals actually doing some of the work at the entry-level position as well, or just even be able to observe and see what happens there. So that's how I kind of do it. I really try to look at a case-by-case basis, and that's why I think you know, companies are unique. Clearly, there are some areas where you can determine, gosh, look, you don't even have an onboarding program, let's start there. Or you have all these managers that are in place that have never had any training. Let's do some consistent work with those managers to help them be better managers.
Great.
Does that make sense?
Awesome. General Marty of the Rebel Alliance is next.
And so kind of building off Christine's question about having other people out there,
Yeah.
you know, when you get to a point, or are there times you get to a point where there's a service that the company could be providing that they're not, or that they could be using internally that's really outside of your skill set, but it's an obvious thing that they can improve upon, whether it's a technology solution or something like that, where you regularly reach out to an outside specialist and try and connect them to that partner, or is it just kind of going to say, hey, you need to work on X and you're on your own?
No, I'm really good at telling you what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. And I have no problem with that because I'm not benefiting anybody by doing something that's not in my wheelhouse. So through my networks, I have several folks that I can refer to if what they're looking for isn't what I do. And I think I've built that more through the BNI group that I work with, and then also just the experience that I've had. I've come across quite a few people that do things outside of what I really want to do.
Great. Amanda?
Okay. I'm hoping my question goes back to your original ask, Lynn. I'm wondering, what does the competitive landscape look like for you? Are you focused geographically? And then, your question about, how do you get in touch with businesses? I was just wondering what your thoughts are around, differentiation, social media strategy, and branding, and if, like Marty and I think both Christine were saying, is there space there to leverage kind of talents maybe in the community that could help with that? And I know it's a limitation of a lot of different things, especially when you're a solo entrepreneur.
Right. So you initially talked about, your first question I think was around geography. So initially I've stayed within this small southeast Minnesota, and I do have clients in northern Iowa. I really am not interested in moving into the cities because that's a really highly competitive field that I just don't have the bandwidth right now to try to break into. I do have some folks that are in my network that I would refer to if they were up in the cities. But I do try to stay in a smaller geography. However, with Zoom, I've reached out to even some of my contacts in Texas and have picked up a couple of things in Texas because everybody's kind of in the Zoom world these days. So that's been, helpful for me to be able to expand outside of where I was already, or, initially starting to think about. So I think does that answer the first part of the geography question? The second part of your question was about additional resources. And so, yes, I have reached out to some local resources, particularly helping me with marketing and social media. For those of you that are doing this, it's a lot to try to keep an active social media profile. And unfortunately, COVID kind of stopped a lot of that. And I had some clients that canceled because of in-person meetings and things like that. So I actually had to put a hold on that. I know that marketing is something you should always keep doing, but you still have to pay the bills, right? So, but yes, I've reached out to a couple of local resources to get some information from them and help, and I hope to be able to engage them somewhere down the line. Did I answer all of them?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
All right, Chris.
Yeah, I was just curious, you had mentioned working with the chamber a little bit, or at least attending some of the chamber events, and that has been a helpful way to be able to make connections. I was curious if working with the chamber or an EDA would be a good way to be able to provide those services to their members. Is there a way to make that connections? That's just a thought that maybe something you might want to look into, or maybe you have looked into.
I like that idea. Yes, and I know I have worked with the chamber. Again, we had a couple of, I was offering us, I was going to do I think they have their like a lunch and learn type thing, and then we canceled that. So I want to get back into doing that. And I know there are, people are starting to kind of say, well, we can do this in a different way. So just like Collider is saying, hey, let's go online. I hope to be able to do that. But if there's others outside of the chamber, and then I don't know who was the second group that you said?
Just Economic Development Association, so something
sure.
like that already. Yeah.
All right, Christine.
So the other question I had was, how do you see this relationship where you have a registered kind of franchised insights process that you're working with, and then you're running your own LLC, the Do Learning Development. So how does that relationship work for you? Do you find it interesting to work as I assume Insights is like a franchise kind of a model?
Yeah, yeah, what I am is I'm a licensed practitioner, which allows me to independently operate and then utilize Insights as one of the tools that I work with. And so I do get a lot of support from them with respect to marketing ideas and helping develop my business in ways of, just talking about it and kind of working through some of those pieces. So they don't provide marketing support in a dollar perspective, but it is something that I'm allowed to sell Insights where it is helpful or applicable to the particular company or individual that I'm working with.
So do you like that combo?
I do. Yeah, I've done a lot, or I've looked at a lot of different I looked at a lot of different tools. I've done a lot of different tools. I used to be also licensed in DISC, and this is one that I am the most comfortable with and that I think is most helpful. And so, yeah, that's a tool that I'm really comfortable with and want to continue working with. And I think the way they have things structured, it allows me to have the freedom to do other things aside from just insights.
Gene, you had a question.
Oh, hi, Lynn. Again, thanks for sharing with us this morning.
Hi,
I was
Jean.
just wondering, in this new virtual world of working primarily from home, is there a new niche for you in onboarding employees virtually? What would this look like versus the traditional model that you may be employing today of face-to-face interactions? And is this something you could maybe exploit more?
Wow, that's a great question. I don't have an answer for that. Onboarding virtually, can you tell me a little bit more about what you're thinking about? I'm interested.
I've talked to some friends who have to bring on new employees that cannot come into the office, you know, for the first, well, they haven't seen them yet, so to speak, face to face because of the virus and the crisis right now. Is there an opportunity to do that well in a virtual world where instead of stopping in for the traditional face-to-face orientations and subsequent onboarding sessions, could you do something in this virtual world where a new employee gets access to services like yourself and then becomes connected, you know, in a virtual way? I just wonder what that might look like in the new world, Lynn.
Wow, I like that idea. I haven't thought about that, Jean. I like it. I think just even as you're talking about that, yeah, I could see that working, because I think the onboarding program, the first part of it is the HR conversation, right? Like, here's your benefits and here's your pay and here's all that lovely stuff that we need to know about. But the onboarding programs that I really like to work on really talk more about culture. I usually like assigning a mentor to an employee, and there would be a lot of opportunity there for people to be able to connect in that way. I also like to try to create even discussion items so that we're making sure we're covering everything. And it could be everything from, gosh, how do we celebrate here, to what are the expectations, and being able to have some of those one-on-ones. So, gosh, I like that idea. So I don't have answers to it, but I'm certainly going to develop that a little bit more. So thank you.
Okay, good luck with that.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's a great point. Davide, nice to see you.
Yes, hi everyone, and thanks, Lynn, for the presentation. I'm David, and I work in a research team at Mayo Clinic, and I was just curious if you have thought about partnering with Mayo, because sometimes we are great scientists, but we are really not able to manage people, or we lack leadership skills. So, and also on the other hand, a team leader may not have financial support for services that you are providing, but maybe Mayo Clinic as a corporation or as an institution can perhaps create a program where you may offer those services to investigators and help them in managing people, especially.
I would love a connection to the right person to talk to at Mayo. One of my neighbors is a doctor, and he's said the same thing, but yet didn't have the connection for me. He said, we need help at Mayo. So if you have a connection, I'd love that one.
Okay, thanks. Maybe I can email you, and we can discuss more. Yeah.
Please, I'd love to have a conversation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Awesome. Marty.
Lynn, do you ever work like a level up from, you know, going into an individual corporation and doing kind of speaking engagements or workshops with HR directors or team leaders of entities that have maybe the capacity to do what you're doing and wouldn't need a high level of hand-holding, but would still benefit from just kind of a 30,000 foot view of what you do? And I could almost see that also as something that when you can't meet with people individually, you can do an online workshop or something. But just curious, you know, when there are entities that maybe have the capacity internally, but haven't been exposed to your particular methodology.
Right. So I've done a couple of things where I've worked or gone to like a lunch for SHRM. You know, Rochester has a local area HR group that meets. I've done work with that group. I've also presented to the project management. They do their big conference here in Rochester, supported by RCTC and others. Are you thinking about something along that level, or am I thinking in the right direction, or do you have?
I was thinking more so. I work for the electric co-op. We co-ops cooperate, and I can imagine where you'd have the 27-member co-ops of the generator that we own. And all their HR directors. And we're all 30 to 100 person entities. We have a lot of really good onboarding training and wouldn't need super intense, but I think that there would be people who would pay for more than just that little bit of networking and kind of an overview, but a little bit more targeted, and yet still not quite that level of on-the-site hand-holding. And then maybe one or two of them would choose to go for that, but kind of an intermediary between just a networking and lunch event and a intensive service providing. So like their corporate sector HR meetings or things like that, trainings.
Right.
And most industries I've worked in have had that sort of gathering where it's a little more targeted, a little more service providing, but not, again, where you're going to go and meet with every single person individually. And sorry, you're on one screen, my camera's over here, so I'm kind of trying to go back.
That's okay. Thank you for that idea. I like that. Yes, I have done a little bit of that, but I can see where that would be so much more helpful. So thank you.
Chris, with your question/point.
Yeah, I think I just wanted to follow up on a couple of things, both what Marty was mentioning and what Jean was mentioning there. On Marty's point there, I think that would be, with that, it would be an interesting thing to think about what you can provide as far as generalized information that you can provide as a value that would both be good for larger organizations to get into, to kind of introduce them into things, but then also as a lead to gather more potential clients. And so what's some information that you can put out there on your website or on social media that just provides some of that detail that's really applicable to everybody. And then when you want to get more specific to organizations, then that's where your service can come in. And I think that might be a good way to be kind of show people what you do, but then also provide some value, which might be a good way to lead into it. And then on Jean's point there, in question around doing something virtually, I know that's something personally that I've been dealing with as we bring 2 new individuals onto our team, and it's a challenge for us of both. These are the first people that we're onboarding into our company, but at the same time they're both remote, and the plan is going forward that will always be a remote first type of company, but trying to figure out how does that work with there's just general management type of things, but then also trying to get them into the culture of the company and, checking in with, how is your weekend, and doing that water cooler type of situation. It's when it starts remote, it's a little bit of a unique situation. So I think that would be really interesting. I'd be curious to see what you come up with for those ideas. And it might be a good way to just scale what you're doing even beyond the regional borders of where we're at.
Okay. I'm taking notes, so if I look like I'm looking down, it's because I'm taking notes, so thank you.
Right, any last questions? Speak now or forever hold your peace.
Is there a way that I could, am I clear enough in my presentation of my company, or, I'm really interested in that, it's difficult when we're remote, but if there are ways that I could be more clear, I really would love to hear that. Or do I do a good job of describing what I do?
Well, I'm unmuting for a second. Lynn, I think you do a good job of describing what you do. I think the thing that people sometimes are waiting for is something like an example, a tangible. And you did put one in towards the end, but sometimes if you can even give an example a little bit earlier on so people have a framework as they're listening to your offerings.
Okay.
Yeah, I think kind of in that same vein, the why portion of what you do was maybe a little longer than it needed to be, and the what could have could have backfilled some of that,
Okay.
or maybe intersperse those a little bit, because it was definitely valuable information, but it was a little harder for me to discern kind of when we were jumping over into specifics of what you do and how you do it.
Okay. So more of that and with more examples, perhaps. Is that what I'm hearing from both you and Christine, Marty?
Yeah.
Okay, super. Thank you.
All right. Well, we did good. We filled a lot more time. Would have been taken up by a second speaker. So thank you so much to Lynn for taking the time, and hopefully this was useful to you. And
Very helpful.
amazing. Awesome. So one more virtual round of applause for Lynn, and the great job she did today. So that'll do it for this week's 1 Million Cups. We're ending a little bit early, so give you a portion of your the time back to you. We'll see you next month on July 1st, which is only a few short weeks. Oddly enough, it feels like it's still April to me. So please join us again for the next 1 Million Cups Rochester. And until then, stay safe, everyone. See ya.